The scene opens inside Aurora, Manhattan's most exclusive fine dining restaurant, where a 3-month waitlist is considered a privilege and a dinner reservation costs more than most people's rent. The chandeliers are lit. The white linen is pressed. The elite of New York City are already seated. And at the center of the dining floor, in front of every member of staff, every guest, every watching eye, Eric Caldwell, general manager of Aurora, raises one finger. Not to make a point. To silence someone. Her name is Diana. And she is holding a termination notice. Here's what Eric didn't know about that moment. The moment he pointed that finger at her like she was nothing, he wasn't just firing a waitress. He was pulling the pin on a grenade he couldn't see. Because Diana's bank account? Spotless. Her resume? Flawless. Her composure? Ice. But the ring she tucked inside a locket around her neck that morning, the one with a stone worth more than this entire restaurant, that belonged to Kim Lee. And Kim Lee answers to no one. Except his father. And his father? Was already sitting in the corner booth. Watching everything. So here's the question this story is going to answer. Why would a woman connected to one of the most powerful families on the East Coast, a family whose name makes politicians nervous and whose silence makes armies stand down, why would she spend her mornings polishing wine glasses for $14 an hour? And why, on the worst day of her working life, does she still refuse to make a single phone call that could end Eric Caldwell's career before dinner is even served? That's Diana. That's her pride. That's her flaw. And that is exactly what makes her dangerous. 6:47 a.m., staff entrance, Aurora Restaurant, Midtown Manhattan. Diana arrived 13 minutes early, the way she always did. She didn't do it to impress anyone. She did it because the 13 minutes belonged to her, the quiet before the polished chaos of Aurora's breakfast prep, before Eric's voice filled every corner of the kitchen like a fog that never quite lifted. She hung her coat. Smoothed her vest. Checked her name tag in the small mirror by the staff lockers. Diana. Just Diana. No last name on the badge. That was the uniform policy. She preferred it that way. Her fingers moved briefly to the locket at her collarbone, a habit, almost involuntary now. She pressed her thumb against the small clasp without opening it. She didn't need to look inside. She knew what was in there. She could feel the weight of it, the way you feel the weight of a decision you've already made and aren't ready to explain to anyone yet. Not today, she told herself. Today is just work. She tucked the locket beneath her shirt and walked onto the floor. She had no idea that by the time the dinner service ended, the word work would mean something completely different. And that the quiet old Korean man who always requested the corner booth, table 14, near the window, always alone, always ordering nothing but jasmine tea, would finally stand up. Before we go any further, if you're new here, please like and subscribe to our channel. It costs you nothing, but it means everything to us. Now let's get into the story. Diana arrived at Aurora at 6:47 in the morning, 13 minutes before her shift began, the way she always did. The staff entrance on West 54th Street smelled like dish soap and cold air, and the fluorescent light above the lockers flickered the way it had been flickering for 3 weeks, something Eric had promised to fix and forgotten, the way he forgot everything that didn't directly serve him. She hung her coat on hook number 9. Smoothed the front of her black vest. Adjusted her name tag until it sat perfectly level. Then she reached beneath the collar of her shirt and found the locket. It was a simple gold oval on a thin chain, understated, the kind of thing that could belong to anyone. But what was inside it did not belong to just anyone. Inside, nestled against a small square of black velvet, was a ring. A princess-cut diamond, 4 carats, set in platinum, with a thin band of paved stones that caught light the way a chandelier catches it, scattering it everywhere, making the whole room feel brighter. Kim Lee had placed it on her finger 6 months ago on a rooftop in Seoul, with the Han River behind him and the city lights reflected in his eyes, and he had said only 4 words before she answered. "You deserve everything, Diana." She pressed her thumb against the locket's clasp without opening it. She didn't need to look at it. She just needed to feel that it was there. She tucked it back beneath her shirt, walked out onto the dining floor, and told herself what she told herself every morning. Today is just work. 3 months ago, in the penthouse suite of the Park Hyatt on 57th Street, Kim Lee had stood at the floor-to-ceiling window with his jacket off and his sleeves rolled to the elbow, watching the city below with the particular stillness of a man who had learned early that patience was its own kind of power. Diana had been adjusting her earrings in the mirror behind him when he spoke. "I don't understand it," he said. Not unkindly. Never unkindly, with her. You could have anything. You know that. One call. One word from me and every door in the city opens. And instead you choose to carry plates for people who couldn't afford to look at you if they knew who you were. Diana had set down her earring and met his reflection in the mirror. That's exactly why, she said. He turned to look at her directly then, that dark, careful gaze she had come to read the way other people read weather. I want to know that what I build is mine, she said. Not borrowed. Not handed to me because of your name. Mine. My work. My reputation. My proof. She crossed the room and straightened the collar of his shirt with both hands, the way she did when she wanted him to really hear her. I love you, Lee. But I need to know I can stand on my own before I stand beside you. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he covered her hands with his and held them there, at his collar, against his chest. 3 months, he said. I give you 3 months. And then I'm coming to eat at that restaurant whether you like it or not. She had laughed. Genuinely, fully, the way she rarely let herself laugh in public. She didn't know then that 3 months would be exactly enough time for Eric Caldwell to make the worst mistake of his career. Eric held his pre-service meetings the way generals hold briefings before battles they've already decided they'll win. He stood at the front of the assembled staff at 9 a.m., his gray suit pressed to a knife's edge, his cufflinks catching the overhead light with every gesture. He was not a tall man, but he used whatever height he had aggressively, leaning forward, squaring his shoulders, pointing when he could have spoken and raising his voice when a lower tone would have been more effective. Table 6 had a water ring on the linen last night, he said, scanning the row of staff the way a teacher scans a classroom for the student most likely to have done it. Someone ironed it wet. That is not an Aurora standard. That is a diner standard. And if I find out who it was, they will be refolding linens in the basement for the next 2 weeks. No one spoke. That was the correct response to Eric. Silence meant you understood. Silence meant you'd absorbed the threat and filed it appropriately. Diana stood at the end of the second row, hands clasped behind her back, eyes forward. She had noticed, in her 4 months at Aurora, that Eric's cruelty operated on a specific frequency. He was loudest when he felt the most insecure, and he felt most insecure at the start of a full house service. Tonight was a full house. A private event in the East Wing for a group of Manhattan investors. Every table booked. I want perfect service tonight, Eric continued. No errors. No improvisation. No personality. You are extensions of this restaurant, not individuals. Act like it. Diana didn't move. But in the small, quiet space behind her sternum, something hardened. No personality, she thought. Right. She had built her entire life on personality. On warmth, on attention, on the specific human skill of making people feel seen. It was why her tables always tipped well, why guests asked for her by name, why the older couple in table 12 last Saturday had left her a handwritten note along with their gratuity. Eric wouldn't know a genuine human connection if it handed him a reservation card. She kept her face still and waited for the meeting to end. It happened at 7:19 in the evening, during the height of the private event. Diana was crossing the East Wing with a tray balanced on one hand, 3 plates of pan-seared halibut, sauce already set, garnish perfect, when the woman stepped backward from table 8 without looking. Her name, Diana would learn later, was Vivian Harlow. She was wearing a cream Chanel suit and approximately $40,000 in jewelry, and she stepped directly into Diana's path with the careless confidence of someone who had never had to watch where she was going. The collision was brief and violent. The tray tilted. 1 plate of halibut landed on the floor. The sauce, a pale lemon beurre blanc, caught the edge of Vivian Harlow's sleeve. There was a sharp gasp from the surrounding tables. Diana had the tray restabilized within 2 seconds. The other 2 plates were safe. She was already beginning the apology that the situation required, when Vivian Harlow raised her voice. "Are you serious?" Her tone was the particular variety of outrage that assumes guilt before evidence. "Do you have any idea what this suit cost?" "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. You walked right into me." Diana opened her mouth, closed it. She had not walked into her. She had physics and trajectory and the evidence of her own body on her side. But she also had a job, a section full of guests watching, and a professional obligation to absorb what was being handed to her. Eric appeared from the far end of the room as if he'd materialized from the conflict itself. He assessed the scene in exactly 3 seconds. He looked at the floor. He looked at Vivian Harlow's sleeve. He looked at Diana. "Diana," he said, his voice carrying precisely far enough for the nearby tables to hear. "My office. After service. And someone get Mrs. Harlow a clean towel and a complimentary dessert." He didn't look at Diana again. He didn't look at the angle of Vivian Harlow's footsteps, or the direction she'd been moving, or the fact that 3 witnesses at table 9 had watched the whole thing unfold. He had already decided. He already decided. Table 14, the corner booth near the west window, had been occupied since 6 p.m. Diana had noticed him when she first came onto the floor, an elderly Korean man, slight in frame, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit with no tie. He had silver at his temples and the kind of composed, unhurried expression that made him look like he was watching the restaurant the way a chess player watches a board, not reacting, just seeing. He had ordered jasmine tea. Nothing else. The other staff had cycled past him without stopping. He wasn't ordering food. He wasn't running a large bill. To Eric's establishment, a man who ordered only tea at a full house service was occupying valuable real estate. But Diana stopped. "Can I bring you anything else, sir?" she asked, refilling his cup without being asked. "The kitchen has a wonderful congee tonight if you'd prefer something lighter." No pressure at all. The old man looked up at her. His eyes were very dark and very still, and for a moment Diana had the peculiar sensation of being evaluated, not critically, but comprehensively, the way someone looks at a thing they are trying to understand completely. "You are very kind," he said. His English was precise, accented, unhurried. "It's my job," Diana said, smiling. "No," he said simply. "Kindness is not a job. It is a character." He lifted the cup of tea with both hands. "Thank you, Diana." She hadn't told him her name. She assumed he'd read her name tag. She walked back toward the kitchen without looking at the small, quiet smile that crossed his face the moment she turned away. Backhand index pointing right. If you're enjoying the story so far, please like and subscribe to our channel. We drop new stories every week and we don't want you to miss a single chapter. Eric called her into his office at 9:53 when the last of the private event guests had filed out and the floor staff were clearing linens. The office was small but curated for authority, framed awards on the wall, a desk kept deliberately clear, a single lamp positioned to put whoever sat across from Eric in just enough shadow to feel at a disadvantage. He was already seated when Diana came in. The paperwork was already on the desk. She saw it immediately. A single white envelope, her name typed on the front. Beside it, a printed termination form with the Aurore corporate header at the top. "Sit down," Eric said. "I'll stand," Diana said. His jaw tightened, but he let it go. "Tonight was a pattern, not an incident," he said, sliding the envelope across the desk toward her. "I've been documenting for 6 weeks. The Harlow situation tonight was the final determination. Effective immediately, your employment with Aurora is terminated." Diana didn't touch the envelope. "You've been documenting," she repeated. 6 weeks of performance issues. "Eric, a guest stepped into my path. I have 3 witnesses. Diana." He said her name the way people say enough. The way people say you don't matter enough for me to hear your side. He leaned back in his chair and looked at her with the settled, comfortable expression of a man who had done this before and expected it to go exactly the way it always had. Look. I'm sure you're a perfectly capable person. But Aurora isn't the right fit. You never quite, he paused, choosing his words with the kind of care that makes the words worse, not better, acclimated to the level we operate at here. That's not a criticism. It's just a reality. Diana looked at him for a long moment. At the gray suit. At the framed award on the wall behind him, Manager of the Year, 2019. At the lamp position to put her at a disadvantage. At the termination form with her name on it. She reached into the collar of her shirt and found the locket. Not to open it. Just to feel it. Eric, she said quietly. I want you to think very carefully about what you're doing right now. He smiled. It was the kind of smile that means I've already won. Is that a threat? Eric asked, the smile still in place. It's a fact, Diana said. There's a difference. He picked up the termination form and held it out to her across the desk. Sign it or don't. Either way, you're done tonight. Diana did not take the form. She stood very still, her hands at her sides, her chin level, her expression the one that people who knew her well recognized as her most dangerous state, not anger, not distress, but the particular calm of a woman who has seen the ending of a situation and is simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. You don't know who I am, she said. Not bitterly. Almost gently. The way you'd warn someone about a step they're about to miss in the dark. Eric let out a short laugh. It was a dismissive sound, the kind that is designed to make the other person feel small, to punctuate the conversation with a verdict. Diana, I know exactly who you are. You're a waitress. And not a particularly outstanding one. She looked at him for one more moment. Then she picked up the envelope from the desk, folded it once, and slid it into the pocket of her apron. Okay, she said. And she walked out of his office. She did not slam the door. She closed it softly, the way you close the door on something that is already finished, and walked back onto the dining floor. Table 14 was still occupied. The old man in the charcoal suit was still sitting in the corner booth, both hands around his jasmine tea, watching the room. Their eyes met across the floor. He gave her the smallest nod. She did not yet understand what it meant. The front doors of Aurora opened at 10:22 p.m. The restaurant was technically closed. The floor staff were mid-breakdown, stacking chairs, bundling linen. 2 servers were counting their tips at the bar. The sound of the doors opening made one of them look up. Then they all looked up. There were 21 of them. 20 men in dark suits, tailored, fitted, not the off-the-rack variety that filled Eric's wardrobe, but the kind of suits that are made for specific bodies by specific people who charge accordingly, and at the front of them, one step ahead, a man who did not need a suit to tell you he was in charge. Kim Lee was 32 years old and built with the quiet, certain authority of someone who had been raised inside power rather than having to acquire it. He was not the tallest man in the room. He didn't need to be. He walked the way the center of gravity of a room walks, everything else simply adjusted. He stopped just inside the entrance and looked across the dining floor. He found Diana in 4 seconds. The temperature in the room, which had been the comfortable ambient warmth of a restaurant winding down for the evening, dropped by several degrees. Not literally. But every person on that floor felt it, that particular atmospheric shift when something enters a space that is significantly larger than the space itself. One of the junior servers dropped a stack of side plates. Nobody laughed. Eric Caldwell emerged from the back hallway, already irritated by the intrusion, already composing the dismissal he was about to deliver to whoever had walked in after closing. He stopped when he saw the 21 men. He stopped the way a person stops when their brain sends a signal that something is wrong before the eyes have fully processed what they're looking at. "We're closed," he said. His voice was admirably steady. "If you'd like to make a reservation." Kim Lee didn't look at him. He was still looking at Diana. "Are you all right?" he asked her, across the room, in a voice that was quiet enough to be private and somehow clear enough for everyone to hear. Diana looked at the envelope in her apron pocket. Then she looked at him. "I've had better evenings," she said. Kim Lee's expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes did. He turned to the man on his left and said 3 words in Korean. The 20 men spread through the restaurant like water finding the edges of a room. "Who are you people?" Eric demanded. He had found some of his authority again, or was trying to. "I'm calling the police." "Please do," Kim Lee said. He finally looked at Eric, and it was the look of a man acknowledging a problem he intends to resolve efficiently. "While you're calling, you should probably know that Aurora Restaurant, this building, this franchise, the 3 sister locations in New York and the licensing arrangement with the parent company, all fall under a portfolio managed by KL Capital Group." He paused. "My portfolio." Eric's face went through several transitions. He started. "That's not." "It's publicly filed," Kim Lee said. "You can verify it." A sound came from the corner of the room. The scrape of a chair. Slow, deliberate. Every head turned toward table 14. The old man in the charcoal suit rose to his feet with the unhurried dignity of someone who has never needed to rush to be heard. He smoothed the front of his jacket. He lifted his teacup, set it down precisely in its saucer. Then he turned to face the room. And something happened to the 20 men in suits. They bowed. Not a small acknowledgement, a real bow, simultaneous, collective, the way people bow to something they genuinely revere. Kim Lee bowed. Diana stood very still. Eric Caldwell looked at the old man in the corner and felt, for the first time in a very long career of making other people feel small, the floor shift beneath his own feet. "My name," the old man said, in his precise, unhurried English, "is Kim Park-soo." He let the name settle into the room the way a stone settles into still water, with ripples that keep moving long after the impact. "I have been eating jasmine tea at table 14 every Thursday evening for 6 weeks. He looked at Eric with those dark, still eyes. "I wanted to understand what kind of establishment my son's fiancée was working in." A pause. "Now I understand completely." Eric's face had gone the color of the white linen on the tables around him. "Mr. Kim, I had no idea," the staff member in question had multiple performance. Kim Park-soo said quietly, "served me tea every week with more grace than you have demonstrated in this entire conversation." He turned to look at Diana, and his expression shifted, became something warmer, something that looked almost like approval. "My son chose well." Diana felt something loosen in her chest. Something she hadn't known was held tight. They walked Eric Caldwell out at 10:51 p.m. He was escorted, politely, professionally, but unmistakably, through the front doors and into the rain that had started sometime during the last hour. 2 of Kim Lee's men carried the contents of his office in a single box. His framed Manager of the Year award was on top. He stood on the wet sidewalk of West 54th Street and looked back through the glass doors at the restaurant he had managed for 4 years as if it had rearranged itself into something he no longer recognized. It had. Inside, Kim Park-soo was seated again at table 14, and Kim Lee was across from him, and Diana was sitting between them at a table that had been reset with fresh linen and a proper tea service, 3 cups this time. The senior member of KL Capital Group's legal team had already drawn up the preliminary transfer documents. The Aurora franchise management contract, effective immediately, was under review for reassignment. There was a folder on the table in front of Diana with her name on the cover page, her actual name, her full name, not just the first name on a staff badge. Kim Lee slid it toward her. "You said you wanted something that was yours," he said. "Built by your own hands. Your own reputation." He nodded at the folder. "Start here." Diana looked at the folder. Then at Kim Park-soo, who was watching her with the same quiet, comprehensive expression he'd worn every Thursday for 6 weeks. "You knew," she said to him. "The whole time. You were watching." "I was learning," he corrected gently. "There is a difference." She laughed, that full, genuine laugh that she rarely let herself have in public. Kim Lee looked at her the way he always looked at her, with the patience of a man who knows exactly what he has. She opened the folder. The first page was a management proposal. The second page was a letter of full ownership, conditional, provisional, requiring her signature and her plan and her work. Requiring her. She reached into the collar of her shirt. She unclipped the locket, opened it, and took out the ring. She set the locket on the table. She put the ring on her finger. Then she picked up the pen. Outside, the rain came down on Eric Caldwell and his cardboard box and his framed award from 2019. Inside, the chandeliers of Aurora were still lit, and the woman whose name was just Diana on a staff badge was signing her name, her full name, to the first page of something that was entirely, completely, and finally hers. The best revenge isn't anger. It's arriving, quietly, completely, on your own terms, at exactly where you were always meant to be. OUTRO, manager fired the black waitress. And that, right there, is where Eric Caldwell's story ends and Diana's truly begins. Not with a fight. Not with screaming or tears or a dramatic confrontation that left anyone breathless. But with a pen. With a signature. With a woman who had spent 4 months carrying plates for people who never once stopped to consider that she might be carrying a crown underneath her uniform. That's the thing about people like Eric. They look at a person in a vest and a name tag and they see a function, not a human being. They see something useful until it becomes inconvenient, and then they see something disposable. They never stop to ask the question that actually matters: who's this person when they leave this room? Diana never needed Eric to ask that question. She already knew the answer. She had known it every morning when she pressed her thumb against that locket and reminded herself why she was there, not because she had to be, but because she had chosen to be. Because there is a particular kind of strength that only gets built in the quiet, unglamorous work of proving yourself to yourself, with no audience, no applause, and no safety net to catch you if you fall. That was her crown. Not the ring. Not the Kim family name. Not the franchise documents or the rewritten management contract or the look on Eric's face when 21 men in suits walked through the door. Her crown was the choice she made every single morning to show up with grace in a place that didn't deserve it. And that is something Eric could never have taken from her. No termination notice. No dismissive laugh. No carefully positioned office lamp was ever going to touch what she was made of. As for Kim Park-soo, he sat at table 14 for 6 weeks and ordered nothing but jasmine tea. 6 weeks of watching. 6 weeks of a father doing what fathers who truly love their children do, not intervening, not rescuing, not pulling strings from the shadows. Just watching. Waiting to see if the woman his son had chosen was exactly who his son believed her to be. She was. She was more. And Kim Lee, who had given her 3 months and kept his word and walked through those front doors at exactly the right moment, not a minute too soon, he hadn't come to save her. He knew, better than anyone, that Diana didn't need saving. He came because 3 months were up. He came because he had promised. And because somewhere in the city, the woman he loved was standing in an office holding a termination notice with more dignity than most people carry their greatest victories. He came to witness. Not to rescue. That is the difference between a man who loves a woman's strength and a man who is threatened by it. Diana got the restaurant. She got the franchise. She got the corner booth at table 14 permanently reserved in her new establishment, always set with a fresh jasmine tea, always waiting, because some debts of kindness deserve a permanent address. And Eric? Eric got a cardboard box, a rainy sidewalk, and a framed award from 2019 that suddenly felt much lighter than it used to. Some people spend their whole lives building kingdoms out of other people's silence. And then one quiet evening, the silence stands up, puts on its ring, and signs its name to everything. Diana signed her name. And the story, her story, was only just beginning. Thank you for watching. If this story found you at the right moment, that wasn't an accident. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that grace is not weakness, patience is not surrender, and the right people always, always, show up on time. Backhand index pointing right. Please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every single comment gets read, and we will love to say hello to you, just to know how far this story has traveled. We have so many more stories waiting for you. Don't miss a single one. Black Heart.